Hello, everyone. It's the Absolute King here. My name is Dylan, and I've got House of the Dragon, episode 4 of the third and current season. Last week, Ormond took Tumbleton. Not accurately at all. There was supposed to be a campaign beforehand. First, they took Long Table, which really wasn't anything special. This would have happened after the fall of King's Landing, where Sir Richard Thorne had escaped with Prince Maelor. You know, I really hate how Maelor was cut from the show. In the books, he adds interesting character development for Helena because she is given the choice to sacrifice either him or his older brother, Jaehaerys. She chooses Maelor, and then Blood and Cheese say, "You hear that, boy? Your mom wants you dead," before killing Jaehaerys instead, leaving Maelor with that knowledge. All of this is good because Helena has more character than the blank slate she is in the show. She feels guilty over her son's death and can't even face her remaining son because she chose him to die. She is overcome with grief and guilt, and that's compelling because she was described as a cheerful queen before all of this happened. But in the show, she barely reacts after Jaehaerys dies and has no guilt whatsoever. I thought they could have done something similar with Jaehaera, but I guess they just didn't care. Maybe they didn't want to show another child's death, but they already killed Jaehaerys. I like how, in the books, Maelor clings to Richard Thorne like a father when Richard is killed, although the riot at Bitterbridge is much too gruesome to show in full. Bitterbridge is then sacked, and Daron shows genuine rage while Ormond brutally sacks everything. But Ormond actually dies at Tumbleton after Roddy the Ruin cuts his way through to him and his cousin Brynden before finally succumbing to his own wounds. Command is then taken over by John Roxton. Bold John settles into the town, takes Sheriff Footley as his prize, and kills Lord Footley when he objects. You don't need to be called bold to be one of the worst human beings on the planet. Boros Baratheon not sending any men is actually accurate. It's never really explained why he takes so long. The soldiers taking 2 or 3 people from each house is also accurate to real-world history and how armies often quartered themselves in occupied towns. Daron is shown to have red hair instead of the traditional Targaryen silver blonde hair. In the books, his hair color is never mentioned, but I feel like if it were different from the usual Targaryen appearance, it would have been noted. Rhaenyra's sons are repeatedly described as having the appearance of bastards, but maybe the histories are simply biased against her because she was a woman claiming the throne. Still, if they're implying Alicent had Daron with Criston Cole, then his appearance absolutely should have been recorded. I've even seen artwork of Alicent and Rhaenyra's children together that gives Daron white hair. So I think this is probably inaccurate. For Rhaenyra's small council, Gerardis is the Grand Maester. Orwyle is a captive who supported the Green regime. She isn't angry at him or punishing him by leaving him on Dragonstone, nor is Bartimos Celtigar, who is actually the Master of Coin. They never ignored her when she was confined during the Battle of the Gullet. She didn't join the battle because she was grieving. That's what's implied in the books. She was devastated after the stillbirth and Luke's death. The show didn't really touch on that. Instead of being bloodthirsty, she was grief-stricken to rule. After Jace's death, she becomes much more resolute. Torrhen isn't the Master of Coin either. He and his brother Medric simply become advisors after bringing troops to help hold the city. He never did anything that would make Rhaenyra angry with him. Aegon finds Sunfire, and I'm not sure if that's accurate because I was under the impression Aegon was still in a coma. He's described as being unconscious for roughly half a year. I think he escaped King's Landing before waking up, but it's unclear enough that I can't say for certain. The plot where he's captured by the Staunton men and immediately rescued just feels like filler. The books don't really describe what happens to him during this period. Alan is sent to court, which doesn't happen in the books. By the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time, but Alan attempted to claim a dragon, failed, and somehow survived. I'm not really sure what he's doing now because the show hasn't made it clear. The Triarchy Raiders never actually landed in the books, so Corlys going out personally to deal with them isn't rat problem is solved with cats after Otto comes up with the idea, not by Alan. Criston and Gwaine are at Harrenhal. First off, Gwaine died during the fall of King's Landing in the books. so he shouldn't even be here. He's clearly kept around so Kristen has someone to interact with. Their plan is to march and meet up with the Hightower host while Aemon flies off searching for black dragons and burning the Riverlands. Whether Aemon really went off on his own or was delayed by Alice Rivers isn't fully explained in the books, especially since Vagar seems to disappear for stretches of time. This whole situation isn't really in the books. Aemond and Cole actually planned things together while at Harrenhal. They didn't split up simply because Aemond mysteriously vanished. Ulf the White returns to his drinking buddies. Before earning the name the White, he was known as Ulf the Sot because of how much he drank. I just thought I'd mention that. Maybe he would have had better luck giving some credit to his friends for convincing him to go to Dragonstone and claim a dragon. The stuff with Kat is completely invented because she's never mentioned in the books. It could easily be one of those private events the histories never recorded because it had little effect on larger events. But if Hugh openly told Rhaenyra about it, then I feel like the histories probably would have mentioned it. One thing I didn't expect was Ormond taking the side of the woman over his own soldiers. I guess there's still some honor buried beneath all the scumbaggery. Then again, the scumbaggery came right back when he remembered the soldier's face and had him executed. Darren never turned against his brothers in the books. Maybe the show won't actually have him declare himself king, and this will just end up being a plot line that never goes anywhere. Daemon is described as hunting Aemond throughout the Riverlands. It's never really mentioned that he goes to the Vale or makes a royal progress because that would make it far too easy for the two of them to find each other. He's with Nettles after Rhaenyra sends them together. They grow very close, sharing baths and sleeping beside one another every night. So I'm not sure how the show has him effectively cheating with Mysaria every night, when in the books the relationship that's causing controversy is with Nettles. I guess he simply stayed in King's Landing longer in the books, but clearly that's not happening here. Daemon is also hated by Jane Eyre and had been told years earlier never to return to the Vale. The money issue isn't really discussed in the books either. Most of the money comes from taxing the poor living around King's Landing because they're closer and easier to exploit. Rhaena mentions feeding the dragon sheep, but we never actually saw her do that. She basically just walked up to him. Nettles spent days feeding sheep stealer sheep because he was far too wild for anyone else to approach. That's how she eventually earned his trust. Dragons clearly have minds of their own. Daenerys's chapters prove that they make independent choices. Maybe Aemon truly didn't intend to kill Luke, but I still think that's a bit of a stretch. Rhaena remains in the Vale throughout the entire war. She's described as living in luxury, surrounded by songs celebrating her beauty while becoming close to Corwyn Corbray. There are even tournaments held in her honor. It's funny how they supposedly don't have enough men to fight in the war, yet somehow they still have enough knights to compete in tournaments over Rhaena. Aegon learns that he's been declared dead and supposedly murdered by Aemond. That's not in the books. Maybe rumors existed that the histories didn't bother recording, but nobody ever seriously believes Aemond killed him. Now for a spoiler. Hugh and Ulf being in King's Landing talking with Rhaenyra shouldn't be happening anymore because Tumbleton has already happened. By this point, they've already betrayed her, so all of these scenes are out of order and should have taken place before Tumbleton. I think the show will have Hugh betray Rhaenyra because his wife is being held captive and he doesn't want to risk her life. That would be very different from his book, Motivation of Wanting Greater Power. Ulf, meanwhile, might switch sides simply because he's a coward and doesn't want to fight a larger dragon. But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.